Welcome to the Mean Lady Talking Podcast. This is the podcast that tackles tough questions about relationships, life, love, and loss. It may not be the advice you want, but it's probably the advice you need. And now here's your host, grief therapist, motivational speaker, relationship expert, best-selling author, and attorney, the not really mean lady herself, Susan J. Elliott.
Good day, everybody. This is Susan Elliott, host of the Mean Lady Talking Podcast, and welcome to episode 50, part 2. I know that some of you have seen that I was dealing with a cyberbully again, and I put it up on my website. I have since taken the post down because I don't want to feed this guy's ego, but he came after me on Twitter. He threatened to report me to the ABA because of my attitude, which is not an actionable offense to the ABA. And if the ABA had to monitor lawyers' attitudes, we'd all be out of business very, very soon. And New York lawyers would be non-existent because New York attitudes come with New York lawyers. This can be a brutal legal market, New York, and you gotta have attitude. But I have not given judges attitude for most of my career, which is over 15 years. I ran into a judge last year who I had everything. They say when the law is not on your side, argue the facts. When the facts are not on the side, argue the law. When neither are on your side, pound on the table. I had this case, both the law and the facts were on my side. The other side waltzed in and out of court, didn't tell anybody he wasn't showing up, really skirted his responsibility to the court just to let people know where he was. We all showed up the Monday after Thanksgiving, and he did not. He was out of the country, and he never told anybody, and he had a court hearing, and he hadn't sent anybody or prepped anybody. This poor first-year lawyer shows up at court. She has no idea what's going on, and I made her sit there. And the reason I made her sit there was because I wanted her to explain to the judge where he was. Well, she got like 3 words out of her mouth, and the judge stayed the case. So when we went back, I was furious. I had law on my side, I had facts on my side, and I had this guy's behavior on my side. So we go into judge's chambers, and I start to present my case, and she turns and talks to him and asks him what's going on, and he tells her, and she gives him so much time to respond to something he hasn't responded to in over a year. And I was floored. I was flabbergasted. And she said, I had very few cases that were a total slam dunk, but this was one of them, and my client deserved it. And she said to me, "Counselor, you're being really unreasonable here." And I just kept staring at her. I just couldn't believe what was happening. And she said, "I am not going to open this lawyer up to malpractice." And I thought, is that what your job is? Because I thought your job was to decide the facts and the law of a case, not to protect lawyers from being sued for malpractice. If you have done things that has jeopardized your case, which his case was horrible to begin with, and he shouldn't have taken it on. But I was thinking, if you do that, you deserve to get a dismissal. I was absolutely flabbergasted. And she and I went back and forth for a little bit. And I knew that I was bumping up against contempt, and my boss would be really unhappy. So I let it go. But that was the only time in my entire career I came even close to it. And that was just last year. And it was only because I had absolutely everything on my side, and the other side had been so disrespectful, not just to me, but to the court. In my papers, in my briefs that I wrote, I was sticking up for the court. I was saying this person has given the court no respect with not even showing up for court and not telling anybody where he is. Judge didn't want to hear it. She just didn't want to hear it. And to this day, I think she was wrong. But, you don't win in those cases, and you could find yourself in jail. And I was in Brooklyn, so I was like, yeah, maybe I don't want to go to jail in Brooklyn. So other than that, I have never been disrespectful. I've never done anything that would ever even come close to being reprimanded by a court, by a judge, by the ABA, by anybody. And this guy wanted to report me to the ABA because I supposedly supported somebody that he considered having committed a felony. Those are all very serious charges. And as a licensed attorney, and I'm out there, and this guy's just a little troll. He just created this Twitter profile. It's been really abusive to a lot of people on Twitter. And I just said, you know what? I can't do it. And he threatened to take out people on the Jodi Arias hashtag one by one. That to me, that was throwing down the gauntlet. And other people blocked him and left Twitter. And I went, you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm not backing down. And my information is out there. I am who I say I am. And he's not. So he published me telling him to go F himself on his Twitter timeline. And I had told him that in DM. But when he took my comment out of context, because he didn't show everybody what he had said to me prior to that, and that he started this whole thing with a threat, I published the entire thing on my website. And then he went completely crazy. And I've blocked him. I've taken the thing down my website. To any cyberbully who wants to come after me, I'm absolutely not putting up with it anymore. I put up with it last year because my boss didn't want me. I had talked to a law professor who specializes in women being harassed on the internet. And during the election, I had two accounts. I had a male account that was obviously not me, and a female account who obviously was. I would post the exact same thing on the male account and the female account, and the female account would get attacked, called names, told to die. I mean, really horrible things, where the male account, nothing. And he would be saying things that would be considered feminist, liberal, very pro-woman. And people don't understand my militant stance about the word bitch and women calling other women bitches. And this is part of the problem, because women are attacked, women are mistreated, women are still, in other parts of the world, they are still treated like property. And until that stops, I don't think there's any reason why women who care about women, who care about the rights of women, who care about what women do, should call another woman a name like that, a name that is gender specific, like bitch or whore or slut or whatever. Stop it, ladies, stop it. Anyway, I get very upset about this, and I get upset about this because there are women that I really like and really admire, and they use the word bitch, and when I hear it, it makes my hackles raise. Stop using it. And then I have cyberbullies, men, coming after me because I call them an idiot or a moron. I'm done with that. If you come at me and you threaten me, I'm going to tell you to go F yourself, and I'm going to call you an idiot and a moron if you can't actually construct a cogent sentence, which this guy could not. And when I asked him if English was his second language, the reason I did that was because I was being a grammar Nazi. And I try not to do that to people who have English as a second language. I try to cut them some slack. I only speak one language well, and that's English, and I speak it really well. And I have a bachelor's degree in English, and it's graduated with high honors and magna cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa and all that other stuff. I have a good grasp of the English language. So even though this creature had attacked me and was saying all kinds of crazy stuff to me, my inquiry about is English a second language was because if it was, I was going to cut him some slack on the mistakes that I was pointing out in his grammar and spelling. But instead, what he said to me was, oh, what, do you hold people's heritages against them? And when he said heritages, I was like, what? And I have since found out who he is. I've since found out that he is in Europe. He's in Germany. He is of German ancestry. And somebody showed me that on one of the screenshots, either his or mine, there was a little thing at the bottom that showed that his original tweets had been in German. And people know who he is. It's a guy named Frank. He's a Jodi Arias fan. He really loves her. He really hates everybody. And he had said, I'm taking you guys out one by one. And he just wasn't doing it to me because the other people shut up and went away. I wasn't shutting up. I wasn't going away. And nobody's threatening my law license over an attitude. I'm in New York. I have an attitude. I'm a lawyer. I have an attitude. If you don't like it, too bad. I have run up against a problem with my attitude exactly once in my entire career. And other than that, my legal career is spotless. So anyway, he kept trying to pull me into that my inquiry about English as a second language was discrimination. And if you say to somebody, is English a second language? That does not rise to the level of discrimination, okay? And to discriminate against somebody, you would have to take something away from them. There would have to be damages. So his view of the law, his interpretation of the law, it's all wrong. And my law license trumps his Google search. Anyway, let's go back to the breakup. So we were broken up, and he would take the kids and he would go to his grandmother's house. The minute he would get there, he would call me up and he would tell me everything that was wrong with me. And if I went to hang up the phone, he would say, if you hang up this phone, you'll never see those kids again. I'm keeping the kids. I would sit there on the phone. Now, he was supposed to be visiting with his kids because at the time the kids weren't staying overnight. They were coming back later. He would spend the entire time telling me what was wrong with me, and I would just sob and sob and sob. And I know that I've told the story in earlier podcasts, but I just want to impress upon you where I was. I was a hostage. I was a victim. He would have me on that phone ragging on me, telling me, pulling me apart, telling me everything that was wrong with me. And none of it was true. None of it was true. That's why this gaslighter, that's why this guy that came at me really upset me. Because I've been here. I was married to that. And he would say, you're going to listen to me or you'll never see the kids again. And I didn't tell people for weeks that was going on. I was falling apart. I was absolutely falling apart. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. I was just a mess. I was going to 12-step meetings, but I remember watching the clock until it was time to go. And I've told the story about getting to meetings where I wasn't even in the right place, or I wasn't even in it wasn't even a meeting that I was supposed to be at. I remember going to a French meeting in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, and I wanted to stay there just because I wanted to be around people, and they seemed nice. They were all speaking French, and I don't speak French, but they seemed nice. And I wanted them to keep me. I'll tell that story another time. This is the theme of this podcast is going to be, I'll tell that story another time. But I was a mess, an absolute mess, a broken open mess that had not been put together yet. And he would just rag on me. I remember one day I cried so hard I fell off the bed. I fell off the bed from crying. I was doing that. I was heaving. I couldn't catch my breath. And I was in such a state, I fell off the bed and hit the hardwood floor. And I remember that. And I remember I have to tell somebody. And I told my therapist what was going on. And I was sobbing. And I was like, I don't know what to do. He's gonna keep those kids. And I know how the story works out. And it still gets me emotional because I can't believe that anybody could do that to me, could keep me in that amount of pain and threaten me like that. I was the mother of his children. How can you do that to somebody? And I don't think this is about him then. I think this is about all the stuff that's gone on recently. But he was threatening to keep the kids, and I didn't know what to do. All my choice was to listen or risk never seeing my kids again. And I finally broke. I broke wide open. I couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't do it. He was doing this to me for hours, twice a week, when he would have them on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And I couldn't do it anymore. I was just such a mess. So I went to my therapist and I said, I don't know what to do. I told her the whole story. And she said, tell him to keep them. And I went, what? Tell him to keep them? And I thought, well, that can't be the answer. Just looking at her okay, you're kooky. Kooky, you don't know him. I said to her, you don't know him. You don't know what he's capable of. Now think about this conversation compared to the cyberbully of recently. I never got teary-eyed about the cyberbully. I never said, I don't know what to do. I never said, why is this happening to me? I said, you're going to screw with me. We're going to war. You want to throw the gauntlet down? I'm going to throw the gauntlet down. So anyway, I went to an Al-Anon meeting and I told them the story. And I've mentioned in another podcast that I was told in 12-step, you're sick as your secrets. And I just knew I couldn't keep the secret in any longer. I was bursting open. And I went to Al-Anon and I told them the story. And I mentioned what my loopy therapist said. And when I was all done, the people in the meeting said, tell him to keep them. And I went, what? Has the world gone crazy? Has the world gone nuts here? You don't know him. And when I talk to people about their exes who are in text and in email and this and that, and they're threatening and they're haranguing, they're doing this and doing that, and I give a person one of these tell them to keep them answers, people give me the same response. What do you mean tell him that? He's going to do blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, change the tactic, do this. So the very next time he did it, I didn't say anything, but I was a mess. I was an emotional mess, but they had planted the seed. It happened on a Tuesday, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't catch my breath, and I was hiccuping all night from having cried all day. The next day, does the same thing. He gets to his grandmother's house, and I will never forget this. I remember this conversation like it happened 15 minutes ago. He started in on me. I said, look, I can't do this today. I cannot do this today. I have to go. So I just said I had to go. And he said to me, if you hang up the phone, I'm going to keep those kids. And I was at a crossroads, people. I was at a crossroads. When I tell you I know what you're talking about, I know what you're talking about. I gathered my breath and I said, keep them. And there was a pause, and I will never forget that pause as long as I live, because I couldn't catch my breath during it. I had no idea what he was going to say. And then he said, oh, sure, I lose no matter what. If I keep them, I got to, and if you keep them, they're not being taken care of properly. And I went, goodbye, and I hung up the phone. And the way the story goes is the kids came home, and he never called me again. He never called me again. And I said, you know what? I'm on to something. And the reason that I'm teary-eyed right now is because I'm giving you this. I'm giving you what I learned. There was no Getting Past Your Breakup program when I was doing this. Getting Past Your Breakup came out of all this stuff, all of these experiences of mine, all this guidance, all this counsel from other people. That's where Getting Past Your Breakup comes from me. Comes from my life. It comes from, oh my God, that worked. And over the years, I have told many people the equivalent of tell him to keep them, the changing of the tack, the putting of the boundary, the you can't do this to me anymore. Go ahead and do it, whatever. I recently did it with somebody whose ex keeps threatening to take them to court. I said, you know what? My ex did that for me for a while, and I got to a point where I said, you know what? Tell it to the judge. Tell it to the judge. I don't give a shit. And of course, no judge cares about this stuff. No judge is going to care that I didn't wash the floor. There's no legal consequences for me not washing a floor. There's just not. And that's one of the reasons why this gaslighter stuff with the cyberbullies really upsets me, because I'm an attorney and I know that the stuff that they threaten cannot happen, cannot be. No court is going to give a damn that I'm a New York lawyer with an attitude. They want New York lawyers to have attitudes. So anyway, this is all my stuff. And I put boundaries in place. I mean, that was the first boundary I ever put in place. The next one was the grandmother. Now, I spent the time in the hospital, and my therapist was like, well, it's his grandmother, his kids. Why don't he take them? I never thought that way. I was not trained to think that way. Those thoughts would never cross my mind, which is why in boot camps I always say, tell me what the boundary problem is. Tell me what's going on. And when I give people the tough love answers to give to the boundary crashes, I know it's hard. And I know that a lot of you go, I can't do that. I can't say that. But I didn't say keep them the first time he did it to me again after people told me that. I had to have that seed planted. So if I'm telling you how to set a boundary and I'm sounding tough and I'm sounding like Sherman took Richmond, and you're going, I'm a shrinking violet, I can't say that. I'm telling you, you can. Eventually you can. I'm planting the seeds the way the seeds were planted in me. Okay? So that day, I say when I hit him with the restraining order, when I hung up the phone, when I said they're your kids, those were all the days where it wasn't that heaven opened and let me in, but hell opened and let me out. All those little steps to get out of hell. Oh, getting out of hell this way. Keep them. Oh, getting out of hell this way. You can't hit me anymore. Oh, getting out of hell this way. Leave me alone. I did all these steps to get out of hell, and you can get out of hell, whether the hell is the relationship or the pattern of relationships or the hell is the breakup. You can get out of hell. You just have to do what I did. That's what you have to do. And I'm telling you how to do it. I broke up, and as I told you, this guy that I knew, I met him at a support group. I don't remember when, Mr. Chicago with the pizza. And I started working in May. And when I started working in May, he was getting ready to graduate, and I had been the person who drove us around, who paid for most of our meals. When I got my job in May, and I got a good job in May as a software engineer at a large computer company. I started paying for things, and then he ghosted me when he graduated because I was supposed to go to his graduation. Apparently, his family came down from Vermont. They were all there, and I called him that night because I was so ready to go to the graduation. I had gifts, I had this, and I had that. His student housing was basically a big studio apartment. The night that he graduated, I kept calling and calling and calling, and finally somebody picked up the phone and put it down on the table. And I was able to listen to everything. I heard his family, I heard them talking, I heard this, I heard that. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, what is going on? Now, you have to remember, all through my teens, I had been in abusive relationships. And all through my marriage, I'd been in abusive relationships. And I had been with this guy since March. I was with him 2 weeks in March, all of April, 3 weeks in May. So I had been with him about 9 weeks at the time. Not very long for somebody who'd never really dated. So I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was still very broken. I cried a lot over leaving my house. I would go back because we had a lot of stuff to straighten out. I would go back, I would cry, I would just be so broken, so upset. And I've told this story that when I left my marriage, I had no self-esteem. And the only thing that I could think of was, what will happen to my kids if I just throw myself off a building? And as somebody who grew up not knowing their mom and not being treated right, I had a feeling that my ex and his girlfriend, if they were to continue on, were not going to treat my kids very well. And that thought was the only thing that kept me from throwing myself off the bridge. If she wasn't there, I would have thrown myself off the bridge. I mean, that was one mistake he made, because I'm sure his life would have been a lot easier had I thrown myself off the bridge. If he and I had broken up and there wasn't another woman in the picture, I would have thrown myself off a bridge. So his girlfriend actually kept me alive. And me being alive is probably the last thing she wanted. But I didn't want to see my kids go there, and I didn't want to see my kids get ruined by her and eventually him, because that's what happened, showing preference to her kids. My oldest went to live with them for a couple of years, and he went there because he didn't want their father to forget that he had children. He basically sacrificed himself, and he told me this years later because he wanted to come home and his father blocked it. And I had legal custody of him, but my son did not want me to fight with his father. And I talked to him, and we have been going round and round and round. And at the time that when my son asked me to not fight with his father, I didn't. I hadn't fought with him. We were NC the whole way. My kids would get out of my car, get into his car. We barely spoke. In 10 years, I think there were 3 or 4 telephone conversations. There was no email or text at the time. Even when email and text came out, I didn't use it, so it didn't matter. My ex, he treated his children badly. And even though it was early in the separation, and even though I had believed that he would be a good father because he kept saying, my boys, my boys, my boys, I was still at the stage at the time where I believed his dramatic abuser's remorse bullshit. And I remember he and I went around one night, we were driving around, we were talking about our relationship. We were having one of those post-mortem discussions, all the drama, all the famous final scenes. I mean, we had about 42 famous final scenes. It was absolutely ridiculous. And he kept saying, I love my boys, I want my boys, ba, ba, ba. And I was thinking that what he told me was true. I actually had a higher opinion of him when we were married. Despite the abuse, despite the affairs, I actually thought he did love his children. But Judge Judy, which I mentioned in Part A, Judge Judy had a saying, you should love your children more than you hate your ex. And he did not. He hated me more than he loved his children. And the reason why I didn't fight with him, and the reason why I didn't tell my kids that he was a jerk, which they held against me when they became adults, they're like, Mom, why didn't you ever tell us what an asshole he was? And I was thinking, that's because all the books, everybody tells you not to tell them. I mean, hindsight is 20/20. If I had badmouthed him, they would have said, oh, you turned us against him. But I didn't badmouth him, and now I was being told, and now they were holding against me that I didn't tell them that he was an asshole. I don't know how you win in that situation. When they got older and they said that to me, and I said, what would have you done had I told you that your father was an asshole? You would have held that against me. They didn't have an answer. So sometimes there's no way to win in these situations. It would have been a lot easier for me if I just told my kids their father was an asshole. But I didn't do that because all the books and my therapist and everybody tell you not to do that. So I didn't do it. And that was my fault. So stuff like that triggers me. It triggers me a lot. And when that guy on Twitter was doing it to me, I was just like, I just wanted to slam him against the wall. So there I was. I didn't know how to have a relationship. I told you guys the whole story about dating this guy. He wrote to me. I heard from him weeks after his graduation. I was working, and all of a sudden there was a letter in my work mailbox. And I had only been working there a few months. I hadn't gotten any outside mail, but there was mail from him. I had no idea how he figured out where I worked. There was no Google. I was so impressed. He found my address. He found where I worked, and he took the time to write me a letter. And when I opened the letter, it was, absence makes the heart grow fonder, one day at a time, together we can make it, this whole, and like my heart was soaring. You should have seen me. I was walking on cloud 9. I was traveling quite a lot for this job. So our group was appies and techies, we were called. The applications people were the radiology technicians. The techies were the software engineers, the software programmers, and the techies outnumbered the appies by like 12-3. So we had 3 appies, and they were former radiology technicians. I'm not sure what they're called. And they would go and they would work with the system manager, who was also trained in radiology, x-rays, ultrasounds, MRIs, whole 9 yards. That we did everything. That's why I was traveling so much, and I was going through Chicago, and that's where he was working. When I went to Chicago, I actually was flying on my company's dime, but I had to pay for the difference when I changed the fare to come home. A side note to the pizza story is I was so upset over the pizza thing, and I knew that I wasn't coming back, that I actually lost my plane ticket and had to buy another one when I got to the airport. It was like $500 for a one-way ticket. I should have bought a round trip and just not used the other one or thrown it out the window or something. Anyway, so I bring the letter to my therapist, and she looks at it. And when I did the pizza story, I talked about this letter. So I showed my therapist because I was so excited. Oh my God, Mr. Chef in Chicago wrote me this letter. Read this. Isn't this terrific? I think it was the first letter I ever got from a guy ever, anywhere, at any time. So for me, who had been accepting crumbs from people for a very long time, was very, very excited about this. I brought it in. I handed the letter to her. She read it, and she dropped it on the table like it was on fire. She had a really nasty look on her face, like, ew. And I was thinking, what's wrong? Now, when I coach people, or I have people in boot camps, and something like this happens with an ex, I give that exact same look. People, I was trained well, very, very well. When I tell you that I've been where you are, and I've done what you've done, good, bad, and indifferent, I am telling you that is the God's honest truth. When I saw her face, I had the exact same face that many of my boot campers have when they try to tell me something their ex said to them, and they were all swooning over or impressed by, or, gee, maybe they're changing. And I'm giving the same look like I ate something terrible. When it happens on a boot camp call, the boot campers are all going, oh, here it comes. So anyway, there I am, deflated. I knew it was coming. I knew what was coming. I didn't know the exact words, but I knew something snarky was coming. And she takes the letter and she drops it on the table from 2 or 3 feet in the air. And she gives me that look like she ate something awful. And she says, how original. It was like somebody smacked me in the face with a cold fish. I said, what? I was totally deflated. But if you remember from the pizza story, that session came back to me in Chicago. And sometimes this is what you got to do. You got to have the seeds planted. What my therapist was planting seeds about this guy. My therapist was planting seeds about I deserve more than this. She was showing me things through her healthy, this is not what a good relationship is eyes. And I do the same thing. For those of you who are just beginning, and to you who may think that your ex is the one or the person you should be with or la-di-da, whatever the hell it is. It's not true. Take my word for it. The one doesn't leave you. The one doesn't upset you so that you have to leave. The one doesn't do it. If you and the ex are estranged, he or she is not the one. So let's go back. I did a thing in Chicago, which I opened this season with, and I stayed by myself for a while. He smacked me in the face in September. I'm convinced that he knew I went to Chicago. I'm sure that my mother dropped some kind of knowledge on him that I had had a boyfriend while he was here and that the boyfriend got a job in Chicago and that I went out to Chicago. I'm positive because he really became very aggressive after that. We had tried to reconcile in July. This is when I wasn't in touch with the other guy and it didn't work out. So he was mad at that. And I'm sure that he heard that after that I went to Chicago. And that didn't work out. But then I was involved in the restraining order. Then the holidays came and I did the Billy and David Christmas posts. And I love David, and I think I've described David for you, that he was about 6'1", 6'2", but he had a baby face. He was a big burly guy, and he was tatted out and everything, but he had this baby face. He was a towhead, what they call a towhead, blonde hair like a little kid. In fact, my youngest son had the exact same kind of hair. It was like very thin and fine blonde hair. And when I would go out with him and David, people would think that David was his father because they had the same look. And my son was, like 5 years old at the time, 4 or 5 years old. So David and Billy and I went out, and then I stayed by myself. And then I started dating these two guys, and they were each mutual friends. They each knew David. Billy disappeared. If you don't know the Christmas story and it's not published, I'm not sure if it is or not, ask me. It's called There'll Always Be a January 2nd. And that came from my dear sweet friend Billy. And he was also the one who told me when we were driving around, the three of us, Billy was the one who told me what he does with you, he'll do to you, meaning that he was going to cheat on his then girlfriend. But I know that she kept him under her thumb and never let him out of his sight. The last conversation I ever had with him was in 2002, and he told me that she didn't want him having dinner with the kids because without her kids or without her, which I begged him to do for years and years and years. Just spend time with just your kids. I can't do that. We have to be a family. I can't do it to my stepson. All this baloney. He was out of the picture because of the restraining order, and I stayed by myself. I didn't know what he was going to pull. I knew that he was really angry about the restraining order, and I know that even though he was cheating on me while we were still living together and that he had done it 3 times, that he was still angry about me having had a boyfriend for a little while. But I had only been in relationships my entire life. And I meet people all the time who, when they break up, they're afraid they'll never be in another relationship. And I'm usually talking to people who have never been out of a relationship. So how can you say that, what is this relationship, the end? And like I said in part 1, usually if you have a breakup, the person that you broke up with, you can always find another one of them and a step up from that. And I knew that I could probably maybe find another boyfriend, but I wasn't sure. I'd never been on my own, never. When I hit him with the restraining order in September, it was a self-imposed solitude. My therapist had been telling me, I've been with her since February or January, because I went with her to try to save my marriage, and then I ended my marriage, which she told me not to do. She was like, don't make any decisions after our first session with her, and then I threw him out. And then she took me to the depression group, and I'll have to tell that story another time because it just doesn't fit in here. But I remember she took me over to this group in a hospital, a psychiatric hospital, telling you guys about doing emergency services and that they had a clubhouse and people were in day treatment. Well, this was a day treatment for me. And I remember I walked in there and she brought me in there and I said, I want to go back home. And she said, why? And I said, because it's depressing in here. And she said, you're depressed. I was like, oh, okie dokie. And my ex told me that I told my psychiatrist who evaluated me at the time that I had a cocaine problem, which of course I never had. I've never seen cocaine in my entire life. But he told this therapist, this psychiatrist, that I had a cocaine problem, that all the money was disappearing. The money wasn't disappearing. I was paying the bills for 2 houses. I don't know what the hell he was talking about. It was another thing that he would accuse me of all the time, that I was stealing money. I couldn't buy new clothes. I couldn't get a professional haircut. I used to hide my business clothes at work. And luckily, I worked in a very informal office. I mean, we have people walking around with bare feet and they're bringing their dogs in. So it was okay that I would come in and I would bring khakis and a dress shirt, but he would accuse me of all these things. So when he talked to psychiatrists thought I was a cocaine addict. I don't know why they didn't give me a blood test, because I've never even looked at cocaine. I've never even seen cocaine. I mean, other than in movies and stuff. So the psychiatrist wouldn't put me on antidepressants for that. But it was one of the best things that ever happened to me because, and this is the theme that you have to start thinking about in your own life. They say when one door closes, another one opens, or open the window, or climb out in the hallway, or whatever the hell it is. But he gave me, the psychiatrist who was buying into this cocaine nonsense, he gave me relaxation tapes. And I've talked about this on the Facebook group. And he gave me like 3 relaxation tapes, and I was supposed to use them for 20 minutes a day in a darkened room. And it was amazing. I got absolutely amazing results from that. And that's why I respond to that today. I'm glad he didn't give me antidepressants. I'm glad he gave me relaxation tapes. I mean, at the time, I was in this depression group. Not only was every single person in that group on depression meds, one woman was having shock therapy. I didn't even know they still did shock therapy, but she did. Her husband was a doctor. She was a stay-at-home mom. She had supported his career. She put him through medical school. And the minute their youngest child was out of the house, he was with a 19-year-old. And so she's getting shock therapy. And then another guy in the group was on antidepressants, and he had the same psychiatrist that I had, who was a really good psychiatrist. But his meds would back up on him. Prozac hadn't come out yet to be distributed widely yet. So he was on old-timey meds, and they would back up on him like every 2 or 3 years, he told me, and then he would have to be treated like he just started treatment again. Me, and if you get the new affirmation booklet, which is coming out this week, this is the last week of March 2019, I don't know when you're listening to this, but if you get the advanced affirmation booklet, I talk about boosting the feel-good chemicals in your brain, the natural chemicals that we're all born with. And why you need antidepressants is because if you've had a negative experience or you've had a difficult childhood or whatever, your feel-good chemicals in your brains have shut down. They no longer work. And so you have to use positive thinking and affirmations and all the exercises that I give you in the workbook and in the Power Affirmations course. I now will have a booklet between what's in the workbook and what's in the course that's sort of an intermediate level. But I talked about this in the Facebook group the other day. The guy who was on antidepressants, and they were old-timey antidepressants, he would crash every couple of years. And this happens to me with other medications. Like I can usually take only some medications. Like I was on Lyrica for neuropathy, the secondary to lupus. And I was taking gabapentin for the longest time, and then all of a sudden I couldn't take it anymore. It was making me throw up. It was giving me all kinds of problems, so they put me on Lyrica, which was hard to get. Anyway, so there was a guy in there, and he was in there because of medication issues. Another guy, tried to kill himself. Another girl tried to kill himself. They were all on antidepressants. I was the only one, and one was having shock therapy. I came out of that group better than anyone else. I was in there for 7 weeks, and I was better than anyone else when we ended. And I didn't have medication. I took antidepressants later on when I was coming out of grad school, and I became so hypervigilant that I couldn't sleep. I was up for like 2 days at one point. I told my therapist at that time that I wanted to kill myself, not because I was depressed or suicidal, but because I wanted to sleep. I hadn't slept in days. And so I went on Wellbutrin at the time. None of the SSRIs, Prozac and all those, they didn't work for me at all. So I went on Wellbutrin at the time, and then I went on Wellbutrin again after Michael passed. But at the very beginning of this process, I didn't go on antidepressants. I used the relaxation tapes. And if you're on antidepressants, stay on antidepressants. Don't ever just come off antidepressants. But please, please, please supplement with the positive thinking and relaxation meditation tapes because they're so available now. I used to hold on to those 3 relaxation tapes. I had no idea where this doctor got them from. But I used to hold on to them like they were my life, like they were my oxygen tank. I would have died if I didn't have them. So in the fall, when I was being treated for depression in February. So now in the fall, I decided I need to stay by myself. And that's what I did. And I hung out with David, who was, wonderful, wonderful person. I went to a lot of support meetings. I'm telling you guys, you have to build your life. You have to build your life. You have to build your life. Yeah, it's tough walking into a place where nobody knows you. I remember I was going to 12-step meetings, and I had this huge coat because I had lost so much weight in this divorce or the separation, whatever the hell it was, that I would sit in the back of the room and I would huddle inside my coat and I wouldn't look anyone in the eye. I didn't want anybody to look at me, and I did that for weeks and weeks. And people that I later became friends with said, we saw how much pain you were in. And I wouldn't even look at anybody. And, if you go into a 12-step program, everybody is very friendly and everybody loves you and And I wouldn't look at anybody for the longest time. I mean, it had to be like 6 or 7 weeks. When I started opening up, I started meeting people like David. He was wonderful. So later on in the spring, I started dating these two guys. And they were really cute. They were both really cute. They were both really funny. And the one guy, I had read Women Who Love Too Much, Men Who Hate Women, Smart Women, Foolish Choices. I had read all the relationship addiction books. I read Codependency No More. I read Beyond Codependency. I'd done everything. And this guy, I knew that he was playing with me. Like I knew he was toying with me. He was a total narcissist. I used to say he could charm a dog off a meat wagon. But I knew him. I knew what he was about. He thought that he was snowing me, and he wasn't. I was using him to get the other guy jealous. But these two guys were both like 5'6". And I told you, David was like 6'1", and he hung out with another friend of mine who was actually the person who told me that she remembered when I came in huddling in that coat. This other friend of mine, she was about 5'11". She was tall and thin, straight up and down. Her name was Pam. So David and Pam kept saying to me, what about dating these two guys? And I said, I'm just dating them. I'm not getting in a relationship. The one guy, not the narcissist, the other guy, I was totally falling in love with, but he didn't know what he was doing. He was confused. So he was a commitment phobe. So I have the narcissist on one hand, and I have the commitment phobe on the other hand. And so that basically says where I was at the time. I mean, I wasn't a narcissist, but I was using the narcissist because he was such a narcissist. He dressed nice. He was good looking. He had a good car, and he worked in a rehab center. I mean, everybody loved him. Everybody loved him. He was smooth. He was suave. The other guy was just sort of like a normal Joe. Just a normal Joe who wore jeans and a t-shirt, and, he didn't have the greatest car, and he had a motorcycle. It wasn't the greatest motorcycle. It was like a little motorcycle. And so I screwed up one night. I was being asked to do a speech at this big anniversary thing. It was like an AA Al-Anon thing. And David's uncle actually was the one who put it together. And I was going to be the Saturday night speaker. And I had been with the regular Joe guy, and we had gone on for a walk, and I had gone to David's uncle's house that day, and that was the day he asked me to be the speaker. And when we were leaving that, I said to the guy, will you come with me that night? And he was like, oh, yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to be your guest, your date. Well, we had a falling out, and then I started dating the other guy, and I had been away on a business trip, so I hadn't really touched base with either one of them. The guy, the narcissist, had been calling me, and I'll get into that story at another time because it's really important to understand that story. I come back, and my therapist kept saying to me, you're going to get in trouble, you're going to get in trouble, you're going to get in trouble. And I was like, what am I going to get in trouble for? I didn't do anything. So I was having fun. I was having fun with these two guys. They're both cute. Everybody knew that I was seeing both of them. I was like the popular chick, turned into the popular chick. I had a divorce car. I bought a brand new Toyota Celica. It was midnight blue. It was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And every guy would talk about turning their heads. I felt like Suzanne Summers in American Graffiti, the blonde in the hot car. And it was like, I would pull up to something and guys would come. I'd be like, I never had this before. I never had this before. I was working out. I was looking good. I was wearing clothes. I got my hair professionally done. I'm telling you, if you broke up with somebody, I don't care what age you are, do this. Go out. Go to meetups. Do your relaxation. Do a little bit of dating, then stop. I knew that I wasn't relationship material when I was seeing these two guys. So I was talking to the narcissist the whole time that I was away. I was in San Antonio, and we had a date I told him I couldn't go to a play. He knew that I like plays. And Daniel J. Travanti was doing a live play in Providence, and Providence has a beautiful playhouse, beautiful old playhouse. I never cried for my father. So the narcissist asked me, he was doing the love bombing thing, and he was making everything beautiful and nice and wonderful. And he said to me, oh, you said you had a play, and I really and I know that you like Daniel Jay Travanti, I'd really like to take you to see this play. So he wanted to take me on Saturday night when I got home, but I had to do the speaking thing. So I told him, I said, well, I'll go to the play with you in the afternoon, but I have this speaking engagement at night. So we can go to the play, we can go to dinner, and then we'll go to that. And I'll tell that whole story another time. So I get there to the speaking engagement, and who's there but Regular Joe? And I was like, oh my God. Like, he thought he was my date. Even though we had a falling out, even though we weren't seeing each other, he still was a stand-up guy. This is where I was. I was getting better. You could see in the guys I was with, I was getting better. I knew the one guy I knew he was a misogynist. I didn't know he was a narcissist, but I knew that everything he was saying was a snow job. And I knew that he wasn't really sincere, and I knew that he had put another woman in a psychiatric hospital. Again, I'll tell that story another time. Well, I was on to him. I was already on to him, and I knew that I was on to him. And later, tell the story another time, I revealed to him that I was on to him, and he couldn't believe it. But anyway, so Regular Joe's there. Now, they both know that I had been seeing one and the other at different times. And I kept telling my friends that they knew that I was seeing each other, but my friends are like, I don't think they know. I think they know that the other one has asked you out, but I don't think they know that you've actually gone out with the other one. And I was, I don't care. And my therapist is like, it's going to blow up in your face, going to blow up in your face. And I was like, I don't care. So I was having fun. Okay, I was having fun. All of my teenage relationships were abusive. I was in an abusive marriage for a long time. This was fun. I knew I wasn't ready for a relationship, but this stuff was fun. And I urge you to take the time out. So Regular Joe comes up to me, shakes Narcissist's hand, and then they both take their place on either side of me, without really acknowledging that the other one was on the other side. They each were having a one-to-one conversation with me. One was holding my coat, one was holding my coffee. And I'm standing there and I'm like, I don't know what to do. This is crazy. David swung by. Now, I'm 5'1", David's 6'1", Regular Joe's 5'6", Narcissist is 5'6", so they're both short guys compared to regular heighted guys and David. I'm standing there in the middle, everybody's looking at me, Pam's across the room with her eyes as big as saucers, and David swings by and he whispers into my ear. He goes, very nice, bookends. And I was like, oh my God, I wanted to go through the floor right then and there. Regular Joe disappears at some time in the evening, and there was a dance afterwards, and there was all these people were getting together, and Narcissist knew everybody in the room because he was a counselor at a rehab center. And so he knew everybody, and half the people that been through that rehab center, they knew him as a counselor. And he and I broke up that night. Again, story another time, sorry, but I'm running out of time here. But the point that I want to make here on my 50th episode of Mean Lady Talking Podcast, please, getting past your breakup is about turning a devastating loss into the best thing that ever happened to you. In that time that I spent by myself, and I think it was a year and a half that I wasn't in a relationship, I grew so much. I did my Sunday bike rides. I joined 2 gyms. I was in good shape. I was spending my money on me and learning that when I had money, it doesn't get spent on banana heads. Neither Regular Joe nor Narcissist ever had me take a dime out of my pocket. So I was moving. And with Regular Joe, I had the better car, so we would take my car, but he would always, guy in Chicago would sit in the car when we pulled up to a gas station. Never once said, let me pump it, let me pay for it, nothing. Regular Joe used to jump out of my car, fill up the tank, and pay for it. That's what a guy should do. That is absolutely what a guy should do, especially if you're using the car. Narcissist, of course, doing the love bombing thing, had me sit in his car, and he got the gas, and he paid for this, and blah, blah, blah. But I was doing it. I was having better relationships. They weren't what was to come, but I was moving. And part of me moving was being by myself, journaling, being by myself. So it was a very good first year. I mean, it was tough. Doing the restraining order and the testimony was tough, but slowly, I walked out of that courthouse when I testified in that restraining order and said nobody has the right to put their hands on me. It was the first time in my life I declared that. And from that day to this day, nobody has abused me. Nobody has abused me verbally, mentally, emotionally, or physically. Nobody has called me a name. He called me every name in the book, disgusting, horrible names that he would string together. And since I left him, even all these guys that I had short relationships with, or I was just dating or whatever, not one called me a name. Not when I said I can't see you anymore, not when they said they couldn't see me anymore. I went to a higher caliber almost right away because I was listening to people like my counselor. I was listening to people like my 12-step people, and I went to therapy meetings. I went to support group meetings. I went to the depression group. And one of the things that the psychiatrist said to me that was, I thought he was cruel. I thought he was horrible. And I say this to people now. When I was in there one day crying about Banana Head, he said to me, he doesn't want to be married to you anymore. He said it to me in such a gruff voice. I felt like he hit me. Like, that's how brutal
He doesn't want to be married to you anymore.
Felt. And again, it was the best thing that anyone ever said to me. I couldn't get it out of my head. So when I say it to you, I want you to know I've been there. I know what it sounds like, but it's true. He didn't want to be married to me anymore. Well, screw you, buddy. You're an abusive, name-calling, cheating, lying bastard. Keep yourself. Keep your stupid girlfriend. I don't care. I got the Bobbsey twins over here. Okay, maybe I double booked them by accident, but hey, I'm having fun. Pam and David thought that night was hilarious. And I will tell you, 20 years later, I'm like, you know what? I would do it all over again. I was having fun. I was the popular girl. And I would do it all over again. I mean, within a year and a half of leaving Banana Head in this messy, I was bloated. My face was terrible. My hair was stringy. I had no clothes to wear. I had old, horrible clothes. Within a year and a half, I was looking good. I was feeling good. And people were responding to it. And I never went back to those bad relationships. And you can do it. If I could do it, you can do it. Please do it. Please follow the program. Don't pick and choose. Don't say, well, I'll do this, but I won't do that. I don't believe in NC. NC's only temporary. And NC can keep you stuck. No, it can't. NC is about healing. Affirmations are about healing. Working through your grief is about healing. Building your own life is about healing. It's all about healing. There's an answer. I know there's a way out of the pain. And when this Twitter cyberbully and any of them came after me, I knew how to say, buddy, fuck off. I'm telling you, everything I did worked. Every person I listened to was there for me, for my own good. It is the Mean Lady Talking Podcast 50th episode, and I'm telling you, go back through the episodes. Listen to the first one where people told me if you're looking for sympathy, you will find it in the dictionary between shit and syphilis. It was one of the best things anybody ever said to me. He doesn't want to be married to you anymore. Great, terrific, wonderful. Where do I punch the ticket out of here? And I got out, and I was shown the way by some very special, awesome people who were put in my life, who were put in the way, who said, this is the way out. Don't have to hurt anymore. And if anybody tries to hurt you, or if life hurts you, because life hurts you sometimes and nobody's done anything to you, it just happens. And there are answers for the darkest moments, no matter what they are. But you have to get through this breakup first. And you have to grow your wings to fly, and you have to grow your roots to stay grounded, and you have to grow your backbone to say no, and you have to grow your hands so that you put them up and say, no, you cannot cross this boundary. You cannot hit me. You cannot lie to me. You cannot cheat on me. You cannot cross my boundary. You cannot call me names. These are my standards. This is what you need to do to be in my life. And if you can't live up to them, you get out. And I'm telling you that if you learn to be alone, you can say, I know how to be alone. You can say, I know how to be alone. I know how to do this. Screw you. I'm out of here. You're not treating me the way I want to be treated, the way I deserve to be treated, the way getting past your breakup taught me I should be treated. Getting past your breakup. Getting back out there. Put those books together. Do the standards of compatibility inventory while you're doing your relationship inventory. And put them together and say, this is where I've come from and this is where I'm going. And damn it, I'm going. 'Cause you're going, okay? You're going. I can do it. You can do it. You're going. I'm going with you. We're going together. We're doing this damn it. And there are plenty of people in the Facebook group, and there's plenty of people who have written to me over the years. There's letters in the back of Getting Past Your Breakup. There's stories in the back of Getting Back Out There. And there are plenty of people in the Facebook group who give testimony that this program works. I have 3 awesome moderators in the Facebook group. They are my moderators because they went through the program and they know it works. I didn't know them from Adam. They read the book. Brian met me on a webinar that I did, and he won Getting Back Out There, and I sent it to him, and we chatted, and he is living a life that is second to none. And Dave went back and did his childhood stuff, and he talks about it. He's like, that's where the pain was. And he put boundaries in place with family members who did not treat him right. And Tiffany went back and she was able to look at things, and she was able to see that she could build a life for her son and her, and the life that they're living is one that is beautiful and wonderful. We're not lying. I didn't know them from Adam. They picked up the book, they did the work, they followed the program, and everything got better. And I'm telling you, life on life's terms can be tough. Life happens. Life is unfair. Life touches you in ways that you don't prepare for. But this program gives you all the tools you need to handle whatever comes down the line. Getting Past Your Breakup is a combination of classic psychology, psychodynamic for the family work, cognitive behavioral for the day-to-day stuff with affirmations and boundaries and how to put it all together, 12-step stuff about gratitude and about taking things a day at a time and doing living amends and being who you are, being who you were meant to be, taking inventory and sharing it with people. When I was facing losses, 7 years into this, I did what I did at the very beginning. I went back and I reviewed my losses. I went to the source. I went to the Grief Recovery Institute. I went to John James because I had surrounded myself with friends. And one of my friends had heard John James speak, and she had the Grief Recovery Handbook because I hung out with people who did things like that. I tell people, go to where recovery happens. Don't sit in your living room on the weekend staring at the wall wishing your ex was there. Go out and meet people who are chasing recovery. I met her at an Al-Anon meeting and I thought she was out of her mind. And she thought I was out of my mind because she had been married to somebody who was a big jerk, and he had gone racing around a track on a rainy day and came out a quadriplegic. And they had just gotten married. And he was in a wheelchair. And he made her do things that she didn't want to do, that she wasn't built to do, that she didn't want to do. She would work all day as a secretary and come home and he would insist that she give him his shots, that she give him his meds. She didn't want to stick a needle in his stomach. She didn't have any medical training. And he had long-term disability insurance that would have paid for a nurse to come in and do it. And he said no. He was a controlling, crazy person. And when I listened to her story, I said to her, he's an asshole, leave him. And she said to me, he's in a wheelchair. And I said, yeah, he's an asshole in a wheelchair. Leave him. Leave him. And she did. And I helped her. And I've told this story on another podcast. And my son was there. He was like 13 or 14. I had no idea what was going on. This guy in a wheelchair screaming at us as we're carrying our stuff out. And then a year or so later, I was going through horrible losses. And she had just come from John James. And she handed me the book. And we went to a grief retreat. And we met 2 other people who were doing their work. And the 4 of us created a grief group. And it was beautiful. And when we had finished it, we went to dinner and we went to see Aladdin. And we had a wonderful time. And then we did it again. And then I became certified through the Grief Recovery Institute. And then I went to Stephen Levine, who did grief. And it was beautiful. And he taught me about mindfulness. He taught me about meditation. When I went in there, I was in my little Bronx thing with the leather jacket and the Harley boots on. And everybody was in caftans and Birkenstocks and they had meditation pillows. They were sitting on the floor. I'm like, what the hell's going on? I was like, what the hell is this? But this is what you do. You chase recovery. You go to where recovery happens. Whenever I offer a boot camp, and people say to me, oh, send me the information on the boot camp, and I send it to them, and they're like, oh, that's too much money. And my boot camps are not a lot of money for what you get for them. Okay, and I have payment plans, but it's like, that's what they cost. You either want it or you don't want it. I'm not going to force you. I sell out every boot camp. I went to where recovery happens. I went to Investment in Excellence, and I loved the program. I loved the way he taught me affirmations. Affirmations changed my life. And I became an IIE facilitator. I dunked myself in this stuff. And along the way, I found other people who were dunking themselves in recovery and healing, and people who had been through a whole lot of crap and didn't want to do it anymore and didn't want to do it alone. You don't have to do it alone anymore. This is about healing. And every boot camp, I emphasize the group and I emphasize talking to each other. You have to learn to communicate in a healthy way if you want a healthy relationship. Getting back out there. Start to study what healthy relationships look like, what they feel like, what they sound like, what your 3 a.m. person is like. Your 3 a.m. person is out there. I promise you, if you want to be paired up again, and some of you don't, some of you are going to find that singlehood is wonderful and you're going to be tra-la-la-ing off on your merry way and say, this is great, I like this. But if you want to get paired up again, your 3 a.m. person is out there. It's not your ex, it's somebody else. And getting back out there will prepare you to find that person. You can do it. Getting past your breakup took stuff from Eastern philosophy, meditation, mindfulness, visualization. Getting past your breakup took all that stuff. Because all that stuff worked for me. All of it. I read Melody Beattie. I read John Bradshaw. I read Robin Norwood. I read Susan Forward. I read a whole bunch of other people. I'm still reading people. If you get the new Advanced Affirmation booklet when it comes out this week, I refer to Rick Hanson, who is the author of Hardwiring Happiness and a few other books that I really like. There are a lot of quacks who write on narcissism. I am going to be doing a course on personality disorders because I spent years in the psychiatric community and I know that a lot of stuff that is being peddled today is garbage. This is the real deal. I did it, you can do it, and I don't ask anybody to do anything I haven't done. I have the letters after my name. I'm a therapist, I'm an attorney, and I'm very experienced in both of those fields. But most of all, I walked all of my talk. I've done it. And I did it coming from foster care. I did it coming from the streets of the Bronx. And you can do it too. Don't let a relationship keep you down. And once you start healing, you won't let anybody keep you down. Not family members who are still dysfunctional, not new relationships, not people you work with, and certainly not cyberbullies. This is the way out, ladies and gentlemen. This is the way out. Please follow it. It works if you work it. And yes, I know I stole that from the 12 steps, but it's true. Come along with us. You will not regret a moment of it. And I don't care how old you are. I don't care how long your relationship was. Either you were dating for a few months or you were married for 25 years. I don't care if you were with somebody of the opposite sex, somebody of the same sex. I don't care. I don't care if you're a man. I don't care if you're a woman. I don't care if you're old. I don't care if you're young. I don't care if you're heterosexual. I don't care if you're homosexual. I don't care if you're bisexual. I don't care if you haven't figured it out yet. This can be yours. I came from the streets. I came from foster care. I came from abusive relationships. When I was crying on that bed because he was telling me everything that was wrong with me, and holding me hostage, that I had to listen to all those lies about me. And I cried so hard I fell off the bed. I had no answers. When my therapist and the people in the meeting said, tell him to keep them, I thought they were all crazy. But when it worked, I went, oh my God, I'm on to something. And everything that came after that, I have held on to and I have packaged. And it is getting past your breakup. It is getting back out there. It is the other things in the Getting Past Your Past workbook that is not in either of those books, and it's the next book that's coming, which is When the Person You Love Doesn't Love You, Reject the Rejecter. That's my next book. I'm self-publishing it, and I hope you support me in that endeavor. I'm going to be crowdfunding it. When I told him to keep them and they came home, I said, I'm on to something here. And I started absorbing it and I started listening. And I didn't always listen. That's how I wound up in an event with 2 dates that I didn't know what to do with. But that was after my ex told me I'd never find somebody. And there were 2 really cute guys. And a third guy, 6'1", who had a major crush on me, but he was my best friend. And my ex told me I was jealous of his girlfriend because nobody wanted me. Yeah, that's why I was jealous. I was upset over his affair because nobody wanted me. This is the kind of twisted, mangled thinking that the cyberbullies have. Oh, you're asking me if I have English as a second language because you're discriminating. What kind of crap is that? I recognize crap today. I recognize gaslighting. I don't fall for it. And after I said I'm on to something, I started to put it together. I started to structure it. I started to repeat to other people, this is what I've done. If you want what I have, do what I do. When I was happily married to a man who adored me, who would do anything for me. I drove into his brand new truck and he was a car guy. He was a big car guy. And he never said a word about it. And when one of my kids asked him about it, he said, my wife is more important than my truck. He never forgot what was important. He never forgot that I was in the number 1 spot. Never, ever, ever. And that's what I got from listening to other people who told me to do things that I didn't know how to do, that I would have never in a million years thought of doing. And I wasn't sure was going to work or help me in any way. And they were right. And I'm telling you, I'm right. I know what works and what doesn't work. I've been doing this for over 25 years. It's not unique to me. I've been giving it away. And the next GPYB boot camp starts the first week of May. I'm not doing any over the summer. If you want, you have to write me, Susan at Getting Past Your Breakup. And if you don't hear from me right away, because I answer email within a couple of days. So if you don't hear from me in a couple of days, either PM me on Facebook or write the podcast, Mean Lady Talking Podcast at gmail.com. That mail seems to come through all the time with no problem. And I'm telling you, if you want what we have, join us. Read the books. Do the workbook. And if you really want to step up your game, if you really want to heal faster, join the boot camp. The boot camps sell out fast. I have 7 people on the codependency boot camp waiting list, and I do not have, nobody's dropping out. So we have our first call on Tuesday and nobody's dropping out. So that one's full with 7 people on the waiting list. If you want the May boot camp, please sign up. We won't have another boot camp until October, November, because I want the boot camps to go through the holidays. But if you've gotten anything out of today's podcast, anything at all, one morsel, one little tidbit, one little, okay, that sounds good, or okay, I might be able to hang on to that. If you got a little morsel, please rate and review us. Please go to the podcast Facebook page, Mean Lady Talking Podcast Facebook page, and write and review us there. Write and review us on Apple Podcast, on Stitcher, on SoundCloud, on Amazon, wherever. We need the ratings, we need the reviews, and we need to keep helping people. We need to help people get out of domestic violence situation, because you can see there's a lot of gaslighters still out there. There's a lot of abusers still out there. So please, please, please open the books, do the work, come along with us. I'll see you guys on the Facebook page. I hope to see some of you in boot camp. I'll see my Codep boot camp next week. I'll see some of you for my divorce coaching. I'll see some of you for my regular coaching. And I really hope that I see some of you in the GPYB boot camp. And I'm taking most of the summer off, so please sign up if you want any kind of help. Thank you so much for listening. I know today was a long one, but it was my 50th episode and I'm really excited about it. And I read something the other day that most people don't get past, the first dozen podcasts before shutting it down. And this podcast is growing, but we still need the ratings and reviews. We still need the subscription, so please subscribe. And I'm losing my voice because I've been up all night and I've been crying. So thank you all so much. I'm so grateful that you're out there. Take care, all. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.